In recent years, a subtle yet troubling transformation has begun to unfold within human populations. What first appeared as fleeting behavioural changes has, over time, revealed itself to be something far more enduring. An impairment of the mind. Transient at first, but increasingly permanent. Researchers, observing this shift with growing concern, have identified a curious pattern. Time and again, one feature emerges with striking consistency, the presence of nasal piercings. Their number, their placement, even their craftsmanship seem to correlate with the severity of the condition. And while this phenomenon is seen predominantly among females, it does not spare males entirely. From these observations, a new hypothesis has taken shape, one that seeks to explain this unsettling development. It has been given a name, Pierced Nasal Syndrome, or PNS, a theory that may illuminate the origins of a behavioural change, unlike any we have witnessed before. Pierced Nasal Syndrome, according to this emerging theory, the condition begins with prolonged exposure to particulate matter and microscopic organisms, most notably fecal bacteria, the very microbes that thrive in the most unassuming corners of our world. Under ordinary circumstances, the human nose is a marvel of biological engineering, filtering and clearing these intruders with remarkable efficiency. But when a foreign object is introduced, such as a nasal piercing, this delicate system is disrupted. The piercing becomes a tiny outpost, a surface upon which bacteria may settle, accumulate, and multiply. Over time, this reservoir is thought to bathe the individual in a continuous stream of fecal microbial contact. It is this heightened exposure that is believed to contribute to the peculiar psychological disturbances associated with the syndrome, a chain reaction beginning with a simple adornment and culminating in a transformation of the mind itself. Within the quiet chambers of the human face lies one of nature's most elegant defences, the nasal cavity. With every breath, this remarkable structure sets to work filtering, warming and gently humidifying the air that sustains us. At the very entrance, tiny sentinels vibrissae stand guard, capturing coarse particles before they can venture deeper. Beyond them, a layer of mucus forms a glistening landscape, ready to ensnare finer debris and wandering microorganisms. And then, in a beautifully choreographed motion, millions of microscopic cilia sweep this captured material away, either outward or toward the throat, where it can be safely removed. Through this quiet, continuous labour, the nasal cavity ensures that the air reaching the lungs is cleansed of noxious intruders. A silent guardian, working tirelessly with every breath we take. From the sanctuary of the nasal passages, the newly filtered air descends into the lungs, vast, delicate structures where one of life's most extraordinary exchanges takes place. Here, oxygen slips effortlessly across microscopic membranes and into the bloodstream, binding to red blood cells with quiet precision. Carried along this circulating river, the oxygen is delivered first to the brain, the command centre of our existence, and then outward to every corner of the body. With each breath, this invisible cargo sustains thought, movement, and the intricate symphony of human life. A piercing, a small, gleaming and seemingly harmless foreign body, disrupts the intricate mechanisms that ordinarily sweep away particulate matter and wandering microbes, including the ever-present fecal bacteria that drift invisibly through the air we breathe. Upon this tiny fragment of metal, bacteria may settle and cling, forming resilient biofilms, protective fortresses, within which colonies can multiply, adapt and endure. In this scenario, the piercing becomes not an ornament, but a foothold for microbial persistence. By interrupting the natural clearance of debris and pathogens, the foreign body allows contaminated air to slip past the body's defences and descend into the lungs. There, oxygen and impurities alike enter the bloodstream, creating a continuous exposure to these microbial invaders. This sustained contact is said to contribute to a gradual unravelling of psychological stability, a progression from subtle disturbance to profound impairment. The story widens beyond the human body and into the built environments we inhabit. Each time a toilet is flushed, An invisible event unfolds, a sudden bloom of microscopic particles rising into the air, a plume rich in moisture, debris, and the ever-present fecal bacteria that accompany human waste. Most of this airborne cloud drifts harmlessly into the surrounding space, settling on surfaces unnoticed. But in the framework of Pierced Nasal Syndrome, it finds a particularly receptive landing site, the metal of a nasal piercing. Here, on this small and unassuming ornament, the plume's contents settle and accumulate, replenishing the reservoir of particulate matter and bacteria that cling to its surface. With each flush, the cycle repeats an unseen repopulation, renewing the microbial presence at the very gateway of the breath. The piercing becomes not merely an adornment, but a gathering point for the microscopic world stirred up by everyday human activity. Public restroom spaces, used by millions each day, act as reservoirs of extraordinary fecal microbial diversity. With every flush, every disturbance of the air, countless microscopic particles rise and drift, forming an invisible cloud, rich in fecal bacteria of every kind. For a person with Pierced Nasal Syndrome, each visit increases both the quantity and the diversity of airborne microbes inhaled into the lungs, expanding the body's exposure far beyond what might occur in private settings. This heightened and repeated contact with the microbial world serves to amplify the systemic burden carried through the bloodstream. Such exposure contributes to the gradual unravelling of psychological stability, a slow, creeping impairment woven into the rhythm of everyday life. Thus, even the most ordinary human rituals become part of a larger, unseen drama, where the microscopic world intersects with the choices and environments of modern living. Observers have begun to describe a series of stages through which the syndrome appears to mature. It often begins in the most unexpected of places, within lives of comfort and insulation, where material needs are met and external threats are few. And yet, beneath this surface of abundance, a subtle restlessness takes hold. A persistent dissatisfaction, faint at first, is often mistaken for moral awakening, when in truth it may be little more than a quiet existential boredom. As the syndrome progresses, moral positions grow rigid. Nuance becomes unwelcome. Emotional expression shifts from communication to identity itself performed, repeated and reinforced. In its later stages, the syndrome manifests as a sustained state of indignation, a narrowing of insight, and a worldview cast in stark absolutes. Social interactions become strained, cognitive flexibility wanes, and the individual drifts further into a landscape shaped not by reflection, but by conviction. In the earliest phase of this syndrome, a subtle unease begins to take root. It emerges not in hardship, but in comfort within lives buffered by privilege, where material needs are satisfied and genuine threats are few. And yet, beneath this protective shell, a faint but persistent dissatisfaction stirs. To the individual, it may feel like a moral awakening, a sudden sharpening of conscience. But it is seen instead as something far more elusive, a quiet, existential boredom, misread as purpose. A restlessness without direction, whispering from the edges of an otherwise insulated existence. As the syndrome advances, its psychological contours begin to sharpen. Individuals enter a phase marked by an increasing rigidity of moral judgment, where once subtle distinctions fade and nuance becomes unwelcome. Emotional expression grows ever more central, no longer merely a reflection of inner life, but a defining feature of identity itself. Outrage, exhilaration, and even performative distress rise to the surface with striking regularity. In these heightened emotional states, the body responds instinctively. Breathing becomes deeper, faster, more forceful. Such intensified respiration draws greater volumes of inadequately filtered air into the lungs, carrying with it the microscopic debris and fecal bacteria that the disrupted nasal defences can no longer fully remove. Thus the psychological and the physiological intertwine, each amplifying the other, each nudging the individual further along the path of the syndromes. Progression. The acute stage marks the final and most striking transformation of the syndrome. Here, the individual enters an end-stage condition, where emotional intensity no longer rises and falls, but persists an unbroken current of agitation that fuels a state of sustained hyperventilation. Such relentless breathing draws ever greater volumes of inadequately filtered air into the body, reinforcing the cycle of systemic fecal microbial exposure that defines the tale. Psychologically, this phase is portrayed as the point at which the mind begins to narrow, indignation becomes constant, insight grows dim, moral judgments harden into absolutes, social interactions falter, cognitive flexibility wanes, and the individual drifts into a world shaped less by reflection and more by conviction.
PNS, Pierced Nasal Syndrome, is everywhere. It is all around us, even within your own community. You can see it when you look out your window. You can sense it when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you walk into a church, or step onto a college campus. It is a dream world built from contamination, a fecal-generated illusion, quietly reshaping the human mind. A system designed to erode clarity, to dull perception, to transform the human brain into shit for brains. This is the world of PNS, a world hiding in plain sight.